Although 99% of the time it really doesn't seem like it, humans are the ultimate apex predators of this era. So definitely do your best to forget about all the extremely dangerous creatures deep beneath our seas and lurking in the darkest corners of the forest, because we are still considered the rulers of this late Quaternary period. But the truth is, it wasn't always this way. Approximately 60 to 40,000 years ago, we were hunted, raped, and eaten alive, much like the animals we watch in nature documentaries today. But this time, we were the ones being hunted. According to Vendramini, an independent researcher and author best known for introducing the Neanderthal Predation Theory, a simple idea that challenges everything we know about human evolution. And if true, it would completely change every single thing, from how we developed fear as a species to something as complex as why we developed the whites of our eyes. So in this video, we are going to explore Vendramini's epic idea of how we were brutally murdered and eaten by our so-called human cousins, and how that shaped our physical and psychological evolution as a species. For so long, the mainstream media has made us believe the Neanderthals were our primitive cousins, an extinct branch of our human family tree, separate from us only in culture and biology. They were highly intelligent, resourceful, and socially complex, much more like modern humans, at least according to the information we were fed. We were equally advanced but differently adapted humans who lived alongside and interbred. And if we would ever engage in any form of conflict, it would most likely be sporadic rather than full-scale warfare. Think of clashes over hunting grounds, raids on each other's camps, and territorial disputes, rather than organized battles. But what if this version of history is incomplete? What if, beyond the image of Neanderthals as mere rivals or allies, there's a chilling possibility that has been largely overlooked, a theory that redefines them not just as competitors, but as predators? For over 400,000 years, the Neanderthals dominated the vast and brutal landscapes of Eurasia, adapting to the frigid Ice Age conditions and thriving as the apex predators. Their origins trace back to around 430,000 years ago, with some of the earliest fossils found in the eerie depths of Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, in Spain. Over millennia, they expanded their reign, establishing strongholds across Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. They were the undisputed rulers of their world, fearless warriors dominating the frozen wilderness with unmatched ferocity. Unlike modern humans, Neanderthals were stronger, faster, and more resilient, mostly because of their diet, which was vastly different from that of early Homo sapiens. While our ancestors relied on a mix of meat, plants, and seafood, Neanderthals were hypercarnivores, consuming a diet that was 99.99% meat-based. Stable isotope analysis of Neanderthal bones has revealed nitrogen levels similar to those found in top predators like wolves and hyenas, suggesting that they were at the very, very top of the food chain. Basically the Ice Age's version of an all-meat, all-the-time carnivore club. If there were a VIP section for apex predators, Neanderthals wouldn't just be on the list, they'd own the place. They primarily hunted large Ice Age herbivores, mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, and reindeer. But the prey they hunted most relentlessly was us. To the Neanderthals, early Homo sapiens weren't just competition, they were a perfect target. Unlike the massive beasts of the Ice Age, humans were smaller, weaker, and lacked natural defenses. We didn't have thick hides like mammoths or the raw strength of a bison. Everything we did was predictable. We lived in small groups, followed seasonal migration patterns, and often settled near water sources. For a skilled predator like the Neanderthal, this meant one thing: we were easy to hunt. Fossil evidence suggests that Neanderthals were ambush predators, relying on brute force rather than endurance hunting like early humans. They had short, powerful limbs built for explosive movement, ideal for quick, savage attacks rather than drawn-out chases. Neanderthals possessed unparalleled strength, far surpassing that of modern humans. Their fingers were broader and more robust, with dense bone structure and thicker tendons. Studies of Neanderthal hand fossils show an extraordinary ability to exert crushing force, far exceeding 600 to 800 newtons, about 135 to 180 pounds of force per grip, nearly double the grip strength of an average modern human. which maxes out around 300 to 400 newtons. If a modern human struggles to crack a walnut barehanded, a Neanderthal could probably turn one into dust with a casual squeeze, or effortlessly crush open a coconut with one hand, a strength similar to the crushing power of an industrial hydraulic press used to shape metal. Their teeth and jaw was less about chewing and more about crushing, tearing, and grinding meat, any meat. Even each other's, sometimes. A few million years ago, when humans had just begun the steps to actually becoming human, our earliest known ancestor, Sahelanthropus chadensis, walked the earth around 7 to 6 million years ago in what is now modern-day Chad. Though it bore a striking resemblance to an ape, it possessed a flat face, a thick brow ridge, and a small brain, roughly 350 centimeters in size. Fossil evidence indicates it walked on all fours but was partially bipedal, and also far from a predator. Scientific analysis of its small, worn-down canine teeth suggests it was an omnivore, with most of its primarily diet consisting of fruits, seeds, roots, and insects, much like modern chimpanzees. After Sahelanthropus, the genus Ardipithecus emerged around 5.8 to 4.4 million years ago. The most well-known species, Ardipithecus ramidus, lived in woodland environments and showed a unique blend of traits. It had an opposable big toe for climbing trees, but could also walk upright on the ground. This suggests that bipedalism was developing alongside tree-dwelling adaptations, showing an intermediate stage between apes and later hominins. Following this, Australopithecus afarensis appeared around 4 to 3 million years ago, displaying more advanced bipedalism. Unlike their predecessors, they were fully adapted to walking upright. Despite this, their brains were only slightly larger, about the size of a small cantaloupe. Their intelligence was still primitive, limited to climbing trees, evading predators, and basic problem-solving. However, their increasing adaptability paved the way for Homo habilis, the first true toolmaker. Living around 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago, Homo habilis marked a significant leap in human evolution. They developed oldowan stone tools. Their reliance and usage of these tools led to a slight brain expansion, which directly contributed to the rise of Homo erectus. These early humans revolutionized technology by mastering fire and refining Acheulean tools, sharp-edged hand axes capable of slicing through bone with force similar to a modern steel cleaver. And with this, they began to move out of Africa. Whenever Africa experienced climate shifts into wetter condition, green corridors of vegetation opened up, enabling early hominins Homo erectus to move out via two main routes. The Levantine corridor. This route led northward through the Sinai Peninsula into the Middle East and beyond into Eurasia. And the Horn of Africa route, an alternative route that took them eastward across the Bab el-Mandeb Strait into southern Arabia, eventually spreading further into Asia. As these early human populations spread, different hominin species emerged, including Homo heidelbergensis, around 600,000 to 200,000 years ago. In Africa, some populations of Homo heidelbergensis evolved into Homo sapiens, developing higher intelligence, more complex tools, and eventually, symbolic thought. These early humans would later expand out of Africa, replacing other hominin species. Meanwhile, in Europe, a different fate awaited Homo heidelbergensis. According to Danny Vendramini's Neanderthal Predation Theory, those who migrated north faced the harsh Ice Age conditions of prehistoric Europe and Western Asia, leading them to evolve into something far more animalistic and predatory, the Neanderthals. Compared to what everybody knows, which is that Neanderthals were largely hairless, resembling modern humans in their skin coverage, with only subtle differences in physique. The alternative theory suggests that Neanderthals retained a thick black coat of body hair, much like bears, wolves, and other apex predators adapted to harsh, frigid environments. But their animalistic traits didn't stop there. Their posture was slightly hunched, much more like a gorilla, but way faster. Neanderthals were built for power and speed. Despite their compact, muscular frames, they moved with startling quickness, capable of closing the distance in an instant, far faster than any Homo sapien of the same size. In close-range combat, even the fastest man alive wouldn't stand a chance. He'd be Neanderthal dinner in seconds. Their noses were broad and wide, specifically designed for detecting scents. They could smell your blood or sweat from miles away. And then there were their eyes, huge, deep-set, and adapted for the dark. Some researchers suggest they had heightened night vision, possibly even slit-like pupils similar to a big cat's, giving them a terrifying advantage in dim light. While early humans relied on fire for safety, Neanderthals became the darkness itself, stalking, waiting, unseen. No time in human history was more terrifying than when we shared the earth with Neanderthals. There are cut marks on ancient human bones, matching the tool marks seen on butchered animals, suggesting that Neanderthals didn't just kill us, they ate us. Some researchers believe this was merely a survival strategy during harsh winters, but others suggest a more chilling reality. Neanderthals may have hunted and consumed Homo sapiens regularly, not out of desperation, but because we were a valuable, reliable food supply. While our men and children were being hunted and eaten alive, our women faced an equally grim fate, not as prey, but as prized captives. The Neanderthal Predation Theory suggests that Neanderthals didn't just hunt Homo sapiens for food. They forcibly abducted human females and mated with them. Genetic studies reveal a one-sided pattern of interbreeding. Neanderthal DNA appears in modern human populations, but there is almost no evidence of Homo sapiens DNA in Neanderthal genomes. This asymmetry supports the idea that Neanderthal males were mating with human females, but the reverse, Homo sapiens men fathering children with Neanderthal women, was extremely rare or non-existent. The lack of male Neanderthal ancestry in modern humans suggests that these weren't peaceful exchanges. And if our men were being systematically hunted, leaving our women vulnerable, it's unlikely that these relationships were based on mutual consent, as we are so often led to believe by the mainstream media, which loves to paint history in softer, more digestible colors. But let's be honest, if your choices are being dragged into a Neanderthal cave or becoming the next meal, romance isn't exactly on the table. These weren't candlelit dinners and whispered sweet nothings. They were brutal encounters driven by survival, dominance, and the primal instinct to reproduce. And if you think this sounds like a prehistoric horror movie, congratulations, you're starting to see history for what it really was, at least according to Danny Vendramini's theory. This aligns with theories of forced assimilation, where Neanderthal males may have actively sought out human females as mates due to a lower Neanderthal population numbers, leading to the need for outside genetic material. And 2, a reproductive advantage, as Homo sapiens had shorter birth cycles and higher survival rates. 50,000. This is the number of years we were ruthlessly hunted and preyed upon by the Neanderthals. Let me put it this way. The entire history of ancient Egypt, from its first pharaoh to Cleopatra, spanned about 3,000 years. That means Neanderthals hunted us nearly 17 times longer than all of ancient Egyptian civilization. Let that sink in for a second. And around that same 50,000 years ago, we started to see Neanderthals not just as predators, but as an existential threat to our survival. Faced with an enemy that could hunt us like any other prey, we had no choice but to evolve and fast. We developed superior intelligence, long-range weapons, and advanced tactics that gave us the upper hand. We learned to anticipate their attacks, to strike first, to work together in ways they couldn't. This wasn't just a struggle for survival, it was an all-out war. A war unlike anything the world had ever seen before, at least in the prehistoric context. Neanderthals were brutally lethal in close combat, relying on sheer strength and aggression rather than strategy. But we were faster, more coordinated, and far more adaptable, turning intelligence and teamwork into our deadliest weapons. So about 50,000 to 40,000 years ago, early humans developed a tool called the atlatl, which helped throw spears farther and with greater force. There's also plenty of evidence that shows that the bow and arrow emerged around that same period. This advantage meant we could kill Neanderthals without engaging in their brute force combat style. And there's some fossil evidence suggesting humans began setting traps, using the terrain to their advantage, and coordinating attacks to overwhelm Neanderthal hunters. By 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had spread deeper into Neanderthal territory, a critical turning point. This was when we began our final push toward dominance. No longer just prey, we became the hunters. Our organized war parties, made up of skilled hunters and warriors, began tracking Neanderthal groups, ambushing them before they could strike. Each victory weakened the Neanderthals further, pushing them from their strongholds, cutting them off from food sources, and driving them toward extinction. By 40,000 years ago, the last Neanderthals had been wiped out. According to Vendramini's theory, it wasn't gradual, it wasn't passive. It was a deliberate and brutal war for survival, one that we won. At first glance, this theory is more appealing than most mainstream suggestions, and would be a great idea for a movie. But in real life, there seems to be a massive problem with Vendramini's claims. Yes, his arguments didn't check enough boxes to be considered a theory, because for your idea to be considered a theory, 1, it has to be based on testable, falsifiable evidence. It has to fit within the broader framework of existing research. You must also have enough evidence in fossils, genetics, and archaeology, which is obviously obvious. And finally, number 4, your precious idea must undergo peer review and scrutiny by experts. And it seems Vendramini didn't want his feelings hurt, because apply a tiny bit of scrutiny to his bold, unsupported hypothesis, and everything will start falling apart. Such is the idea that Neanderthals hunted humans. There's really no fossil record of Neanderthal predation on humans. And if they did, we'd expect a lot of human bones with Neanderthal tool marks on them, like we see with Neanderthal bones butchered by what is mostly believed to be other Neanderthals at Mühlegürsi. And if we are to follow the evidence, there's plenty that shows we humans went as far as turn their bones into tools like awls and retouchers. Which raises the question, was it the other way round? Did we hunt them? No, there's no evidence. So maybe we went scavenging. Researchers began rigorous study in ancient humans in the early 19th century. That's to say, for over 200 years of paleoanthropology, there's literally zero evidence of Neanderthals hunting humans. And I think Vendramini doesn't really care about the scientific evidence, because if he did, he could have proved himself wrong before sharing his highly unscrutinized idea to the public. His book, Them and Us, was published in 2009, after the 2006 El Cedron Neanderthal cannibalism proof, showing in-group violence, not human hunting. And in 2008, strontium isotope studies, which act as a GPS tracker for prehistoric mobility, proved that Neanderthals lacked long-range trade networks. Thus, it was almost impossible for them to sustain human hunting as a strategy. Vendramini didn't just get it wrong. He ignored a century of museum collections and peer-reviewed journals sitting in plain sight. The only remaining question is whether his work is pseudoscience or pulp fiction. North 02 made an unapologetic, in-depth review of these ideas that were so good, I can't help but tell you to check it out. And I will also leave a link to Vendramini's book in the description. With that said, my name is DM. See you in the next one.